Okay, if you're out in the narthex and want to hear the meeting on, or the presentation on plan giving and important documents, please get into the sanctuary. Thank you. I saw her right there. She wanted to. One for Jim.
All right, thank you.
And good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thanks for sticking around for this presentation. I think you'll find that you'll get some information out of it that if not new, it'll at least be a good reminder of you of some things. I'm Dwayne Chapman. I'm with the IMT. I'm with the Stewardship Board, and I was in finance since I was 15. I used to ride my bike to the bank to work. You know, that's when I got started. And I was a bank examiner for 32 years. I saw a lot of stuff that wasn't so good when it comes to financial planning. So I kind of learned from the dark side, more or less. So hopefully I can help you avoid some of those pitfalls. With us today is Dean Landing. Dean is our church's financial advisor. He is with Wells Fargo. And anything else you want to say?
Well, I just wanted to add that if you have a question today, I need to get the mic to you so the people that are listening through the streaming service can hear your question. So raise your hand and I'm his foot soldier today for that purpose, I think. But no, that's it. Let's go.
Okay. Okay, could we go back to the second one? There we go. Okay, this is important. What this says is I'm not an attorney. Dean's not an attorney. I'm not a CPA. Dean's not a CPA. We're going to give you the best information that we've got. We're going to share knowledge and that we've gained through our schooling, our experiences, our training at our jobs and so forth. This is a presentation that I put together. This is not a Wells Fargo presentation. I want to make that clear. If it was a Wells Fargo presentation, we'd have 15 more slides of disclosures, and we don't need to go there. So Did it myself. Next slide. So most of you have some sort of a background with financial planning. I mean, you do it every day yourself, right? You take care of your own finances. And you know about things like wills, and you know about powers of attorney, things like that. And we're going to talk about a lot of that today. But a lot of times what happens is things fall through the cracks, and we don't keep up. So a theme that you're going to hear consistently is that things need to be current, they need to be secure, and they need to be accessible. When you leave here, those are 3 words that I want you to remember. You know, the other thing about financial planning and plan giving is, you know, it's a personal responsibility. You know, you have the ability to make changes in the world through the decisions that you make. It's what you do with your money, both when you're alive and at your death. So, you know, we're going to go through some things that just help you work through that thought process. Next one, Kate. So the important thing that you need to have is information. For you to make good, sound decisions, you need to have information about not just the financial vehicles and things that are out there that you can invest in or do things with, you know, but you need to know what you've got. And a lot of people simply don't know that. They don't take the time or haven't taken the time to sit down and put pencil to paper and figure out, well, what do I really have? And what do I have now? And what am I going to have in the future? If, for instance, you have insurance policies, it can change the dynamics a lot. The old saying, you know, don't tell my wife, but I'm worth more dead than alive. You know, that can very well be true. So let's look at the Aging Parents Checklist. That is in your binder. It's behind the blue divider. We're not going to go through every single item that's on this, but I do want to point some things out. Again, when we start looking at these things, you need to make sure documents are current. You need to make sure they're consistent. You can't have a will saying to do one thing with your funds and then have your account set up another way because they're in conflict. You know, you need to think through that process. We'll get into that a little bit more. Some of this stuff is pretty self-explanatory, but it's a checklist that will help you with the thought process, like, oh, maybe I need to look into this a little bit more. We talk a lot about wills. Most people, I shouldn't say most people, actually most people, I say most people have wills. Not nearly enough people have wills. A lot of people have never gotten around to it. Or yeah, I've got a will. Well, when did you have that will written? Well, right after my kids were born, I had that. Because I wanted to make sure that I had somebody in there that could take care of, you know, my kids, have a guardian named. And how old are your kids? Oh, they're 40. Have you updated your will? Oh, no, I should maybe take a look at that. Yeah, exactly. You really do. It needs to be current. To give you an example of why a will is important, I'll use a real life example from friends of mine. Brian was a very dear friend. He was an examiner with me. We worked in Champaign, and then we worked in Centralia together, and then later he went to Iowa City. Brian was a meticulous investor. What I mean is he always paid himself first, and he was a voracious reader of financial information, and he did very, very well with his investing. Brian married a nurse named Molly, and Molly worked for a physician in Iowa City who owned an airplane. And the physician and his wife, who was also a physician, said, "Hey, would you guys like to fly to Wisconsin for breakfast sometime?" And amazingly, they said yes. And I say amazingly because Brian was terrified to fly. But I guess Molly wanted to go, so they went. And they made it about a mile from the Iowa City airport. Before the plane went down, the pilot, who was the doctor, his wife, another doctor, they both died, and Brian died instantly. Molly did not die instantly, but they determined she was brain dead. Her parents got there from Chicago. About 14 hours after the crash, they said, "Enough's enough." They pulled the plug and Molly died. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important because who died first? Brian died first. They did not have a will, surprisingly, but they didn't have any children. They had all their accounts set up as joint accounts. The money that was in their accounts went to Molly because she survived the longest. Molly had no will, so what happened to the money? Her money and Brian's money. It went to Molly's parents. Now, incredibly, and I'm still mad about this, Molly's parents did not find it reasonable to share what was a substantial amount of money with any of Brian's family. And he had several siblings with many nieces and nephews who could have used that for instance, for education. But because they didn't have a will, the state determined how that money was going to get distributed, and by law, it went to her parents, and they were stubborn and kept it all. That's how important a will can be. And you don't think about that sometimes, but you know, you need to, if you've got a will, you need to think about, do I have any wording in there that would address that type of a situation? For instance, you can have within your will some wording that says, if so-and-so, if the one spouse does not outlive the first one by so many days, that the money then reverts to just each person's estate. And that governing document then would apply, regardless of how those accounts were set up. But anyway, that's just a real life example of how important a will is. Now, within a will, you have a chance to name an executor that's going to take care of things at your death. It's important to have somebody that's willing and able to do that job. It's not necessarily a real easy job. It can be kind of a pain in the butt. I've done it numerous times. But it's an important job, so pick a good person. You can name a legal guardian if you've got children. Again, with the transfer of assets, you can talk about, well, I want everything to go to my spouse. You can say that. But if your deposit account says that it's payable on death to one of your kids, your spouse doesn't get that money. Your will might say that, but that's not how it works. So there needs to be consistency in that. So you need to know what you've got. Now, some people have a trust. Now, make sure that your will and your trust are going to mesh and work together. I worked I didn't work at a bank, I was examining a bank where there was a trust department, and I was looking at the trust department that day, and the people were they were practically in tears. It's like, what's going on? It's like, well, Miss Smith died. Well, Ms. Smith had one of the largest trust accounts in their bank. And Ms. Smith was quite elderly when she died. She'd been a secretary for the president of a corporation, and she followed her dad's instructions to a T. He told her when she got her first job, every time you get paid, you put some money in the stock market. And she did. And even though she never made a lot of money, she had around $10 to $12 million in her trust account when she died. Time is a very valuable commodity when it comes to investing. Anyway, somebody convinced her she needed to put it into a trust to manage it. You know, Dean knows about, it's hard to manage money sometimes, especially when you get to a point where you don't really want to be paying attention to all the financial news and stuff. So if you have somebody else that can take care of that, great. So somebody convinced her, hey, put it in a trust, let the people at the trust department do the management, whatever. She said, great, that sounds like a good idea, and she did that. But she didn't ever get around, in her 92 years, she never got around to creating a will, which was very interesting and kind of came back to haunt her, so to speak. Because she died, she had had one sister. She was never married. She had one sister who had one child. The sister had died. So the nephew inherited all the money. Now, according to the bank, and this is why they were so upset, the nephew really didn't even know that the aunt existed. You know, never visited her, never corresponded with her. And all of a sudden, this nephew who lived out in New York City was a wealthy man. But the bank knew that this lady would have wanted to have helped the schools, her church, other organizations within her community. But because she just never got around to writing that will, it didn't happen. Next slide. I think. Okay. Yes? Yeah, that's it. Okay. Something else you can think about here. Something else you can think about. This is, I think, a very powerful tool. A letter of instruction. Some people call it a testamentary letter. Others call it a side letter. It's not a legally binding document like a will is. And a will, by the way, is a public document. Others can see that. A letter of instruction is not. You can put things in there that you wouldn't want the whole world to see, but you want your family or your heirs to see. Now, to give you a real life example of how that worked in my life, my parents both had wills, but they had letters of instruction, and they gave some basic instructions about, where they were to be buried, things that they wanted, like my mom had what hymn she wanted at her funeral. My dad had some stuff about who should get the guns. That was important to him. And I should get the Winchester Model 12, but my brother-in-law should get that Browning pistol. But he could change that at any time. It wasn't a will, he could write a new letter. He could change it. In their case, rather than put within their will, we want to leave X amount of dollars to our church, they said, if you are able, this is a letter to myself and to my sister, if you are able, we would like for you to give X amount of dollars from your inheritance to the church. Meaning, if there was something in our lives that was so critical that we needed that money, maybe there was a health crisis, we ended up with, a special needs child or whatever. If there was something in there that would say, you know what, we'd love to do it, but it doesn't really make sense for us to do that. So you make the decision after our death. And my sister and I, we did just what they said, and we gave the money to the church. Interestingly, that was a tax deduction for us, so it worked out really well. But keep that letter of instruction concept in mind. Again, it's not a public document. You can change it whenever you want. Advanced medical directives.
Question. On that document that you were just talking about, can that override what was in the will?
No. No, it doesn't override. It works in conjunction with the will. The will is a legal document. And that's why you can have a letter of instruction, but it will not override what is in the will. Something you might have in a letter of instruction is, where would someone find my will? Where would someone find my insurance policies? How do I access those things? Again, we talked about things needing to be current. They need to be secure. You don't want them just hidden under the sock drawer, where nobody knows that they're there. You want them to be accessible so that when it's time to use those important documents, they're available. When I worked at the bank in Centralia, I can't tell you how many times people would come to the bank, so somebody had died, and their will was in the safe deposit box. But that person wasn't on, the person in the bank wasn't on the safe deposit box. They couldn't get into the safe deposit box. They needed to go talk to an attorney and get a judge to say, yeah, they can get into the safe deposit box, but the only thing they can take out is the will. So we solved that problem. We guess we did. We've got our oldest son on our safe deposit box. So if something happens to Martha and I, Nathan can get into the safe deposit box. Does he get into the safe deposit box? No, he doesn't. He doesn't have a key to the safe deposit box, but he is on the account, so he can access it if he can find the key. Oh, yeah, that's right. I told him where the keys kept. So when you've got something else to think about is for health care, having a power of attorney for health care. Make sure that somebody can make a decision for you if you're not able to. And that happens all too often. Somebody's in a car accident, and there's no healthcare power of attorney. Who's going to be making the decisions on that? You know, for instance, in Molly's case, she might have had a healthcare power of attorney that said, well, Brian will make those decisions. But Brian was already gone. He left this earth 14 hours earlier, and there was nobody else. You know? So it reverted to the state law, which was the parents. So maybe you need somebody who is willing to do that for you, and then you have an alternate. Use my own example. Martha's my healthcare power of attorney. Nathan and John are also in that document, so that if Martha's not available or able to, or refuses to act, they can. A living will is important. Living will, that basically says, this is what I want you to do or not to do towards the end of my life. Do I want you to make every possible effort to keep me alive? Or do I want palliative care? But you need to have that spelled out. Why put that burden on others? Likewise, with a financial power of attorney, have someone who's available that can pay your bills. You may not be able to. You're in the hospital, or you're mentally incompetent to do it for some reason. You need somebody who can do it. Now that person, you need to trust them. Now in most cases, you can write a power of attorney like that to where a person just can't willy-nilly start taking money out of a person's account. You know, there have to be some conditions met. Sometimes it's, you know, it's because of health care incompetence or something. Then the power of attorney kicks in, and you need to talk to your attorney about how that would be written. But you need to have somebody that can do that. The bills still have to be paid. You know, if you got a mortgage, the mortgage payments have to be paid. The last thing you want to have happen is, oh, you're in the hospital for months. Your house gets foreclosed on because nobody made the mortgage payments, or your insurance expires because nobody paid the premiums. So, financial power of attorney. Something in today's age, and Dean, I want you, because you're much more tech savvy than me, I want you to weigh in on this. Usernames and passwords. Oh my gosh, how many do we have? You know? And does anybody else know them? Or would they know them? Could they guess at them? I think it's a very critical thing in today's world, because there's so much that we access electronically. See, it's the electronics speaking back. So think of a way that you can get that information compiled, keep it current, keep it secure, but keep it accessible to someone so that they would know where to look for it.
My wife and I take two different approaches to passwords. I hate to admit it, but I've got 3, and my wife has probably 300. Now, there's pros and cons. I usually can get it open with one of my 3, but it's probably not as secure as her 300, but she couldn't probably tell you one of the 300 off the top of her head. So my mom has taken an approach to this that kind of goes along with the safe and secure and accessible. She has all of her passwords written in a book. We all know where the book is. It's safe and it's secure, but I know how to get to it, and my wife knows how to get to it. And that's not something we have to do necessarily for all of our beneficiaries, but we might consider doing it for ourselves too. It doesn't do any good to have all of this stuff in a beautiful digital format if nobody can open the accounts. And I mean, I'm sure you've all forgotten passwords, and you know the process of, you know, two-party verification, you know, they're gonna send you a text and it doesn't come through. I mean, you know, everybody's shaking their heads. You know, imagine if you didn't really know 100% what the password was. So, what I would suggest is at least to write them down somewhere, keep them secure, keep them safe.
Absolutely, and I think at our household, it's kind of a similar thing. Martha's got a jillion of them, they're all written down, and I've just got a handful that I customize for each of the, whatever I'm logging into, you know. Just as I won't disclose what my total password is, but my password for my bank account, the last 3 things in my password are USB, because it's a US bank account. And then on other accounts, it might be, you know, the same first digits, and then the, you know, insurance company or whatever it is. So that's kind of how I make it simpler. But something else you can do now, because iPhones are quite secure, you can put your information into your iPhone into the notes. iPhones are almost impossible to break into if you don't have the passcode. So then you only have to have somebody that knows what the passcode is that they can get into your iPhone and look at that information. Just an idea. Next one, Kate. Okay. Have you heard this before? You got to be secure. They need to be current. They need to be accessible. You can use a safe deposit box. You can use a safe at home. I've got a little safe. It's about this size. It's supposedly fire resistant for so many minutes at a certain temperature. My really critical documents are not in there, because anybody could come and just pick the darn thing up and take it out of my house. So I've got a safe deposit box. So you might do what works for you, but make sure that somehow they're secure, not under the socks in the drawer.
Before you go on, I want to just hit the must be up to date thing one more time, because there's a lot of things in our lives that can slip through the cracks. And here's an example. We manage money for a lot of 401ks, retirement plans, things like that. We had a situation where a guy had saved a lot of money. 20 years prior had gotten divorced, but never changed his beneficiary on his 401k. Yeah, look at everybody grimace. Because you know where this is going. So the wife calls me hysterical because the ex-wife, and this was not a pleasant divorce, the ex-wife took what essentially was the entire fortune for the family by contract, not by will, because the will said everything went to the current spouse. But a 401k beneficiary, a life insurance beneficiary, typically a brokerage account set up correctly, passes by contract. So that doesn't go through the will. So even though the will said she got everything for the kids, the contract, which was the beneficiary agreement on the 401k, still had the ex-wife listed. Nothing you can do. Zero you can do with that. And so before we get into the next kind of phase of this, I just wanted one more time to say, look, you know, make sure this stuff's up to date. There's a million reasons, a million problems that can come up if this stuff isn't reviewed annually. And, you know, not to beat a dead horse, but it's just that important. So, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example, and it happens way too often. Way too often. Because people will get deposit accounts, or they'll get a brokerage account, and they have it titled in one way, and it's inconsistent with the will. So what do they really want? You know, it needs to be consistent. And so when you're reviewing your will, you might want to get with your attorney to do that. And as you do that, make sure you've got a list of all of your accounts and how they are titled to see if it's going to work the way you think it's going to work or the way you want it to work. Okay, plan giving. Well, that's what this was about, right? Plan giving? Okay, we're going to get there now. Plan giving is simply a way for you to make a lasting impact. It doesn't mean that you're going to leave millions of dollars or whatever to some organization, but you can have a lasting impact regardless of the amount. It's sharing what God has provided you and that you have been good stewards of over your lifetime. It can be post-death, or it can be during your life. Still, it's the planned part. You want to make sure you're planning to do this. That if you give while you're alive, you're not giving everything that you're going to need to live on for the next 20 years. That's not a good financial decision, but you need to know what you've got in order to be able to make your decisions. Some of the things you do with planned giving can be beneficial in terms of assisting with your tax situation. So you don't want to lose that opportunity to take advantage of what the government gives you, which they don't give us much, but they do have some things in the tax code that can be beneficial when it comes to giving. If you happen to have life insurance, that's something that you need to factor into your planned giving, because that's something that's included in your estate at your death. You may be poor as a church mouse, as they say, and have a big insurance policy. If that's the case, your plans need to account for that. Next one, okay? Okay, myths of planned giving. People think it's complicated. It can be complicated, but it need not be complicated. You can simply have an account. I think you could probably do this at Wells Fargo. You could have a brokerage account and payable on death to EvUCC or the Red Cross or some charity. You can have a deposit account. Same thing. Payable on death to the church, or a CD, or whatever, or an insurance policy. And you know what's great about that? You can change that. We talk about things being irrevocable or revocable. A lot of these things that you can do in planned giving are revocable. You can change your mind. You can decide that you really don't want to maybe help this organization as much. You've got a new passion over here and you want to help this one a little bit more. So you can change that around with some of these planned giving gifts that simply involve how an account is titled. Some things are irrevocable. You put money into a charitable gift trust. And there's information in your booklet about this. Once you do that, okay, you're done. The money is there. It's gone. You may get benefit during your lifetime, but the money's gone. You can't change it. Same thing with a charitable gift annuity, which, by the way, I think there's also information in your booklet. The United Church Funds, which is kind of the financial organization of the UCC offers charitable gift annuities where the benefits would roll to whoever you designate, whatever church you designate. But you could, if you're, for instance, if you're 75 years old, you have a single life annuity, you could take $53,000 from an IRA, put it into that, that would go against your required minimum distribution, and you get 7% return for the rest of your life. At your death, the money goes to the church. Those are things that are available, they're out there. Those are irrevocable. But it's something to keep in mind. And I hope that when you leave here, you look through all of the information that is in your packet, because there's going to be a lot more detail than what we're giving today. Something else that people think that is planned giving is only for rich people. Couldn't be farther from the truth. Some of the best givers on this earth are not necessarily wealthy, but they have passions that they care about and organizations they care about. But they have to take the action to make sure that their assets go to that organization if that's what their desires are. But it's for everyone. I think you made a comment to me the other day that we were talking about this and how it's not the people that have millions of dollars and have the big fights over how money gets distributed to somebody's death. It's when there's just a little bit. And then they're fighting over $1,000 or $2,000. You know, if the people in your lives are, if you think they're going to be that petty, maybe you can avoid that inter-family feud by just letting somebody else have the money. Somebody you know is going to take care of it and do something good with it. The other thing that people might not recognize until they actually start looking at it is how much they're worth. For people aged 64 to 75, or 65 to 74, I'm sorry, 65 to 74, in 2023, the median net worth for those people was $409,900. The average net worth was about $1.8 million. But if you take the median, there's a lot of people that don't realize they're worth almost $500,000. That's something that you need to be thinking about while you're alive. What do you want to have happen to that? That's a substantial amount of money. Next one, okay? So when we talk about how are we going to do this, well, you need to make sure you've got all your information together. You need to prepare a personal financial statement. You need to have a budget. Because you need to know, well, what can I do with my money? How much do I have to spare? Make an inventory of your assets. You might be surprised at what you have. You need to think about, well, who would I leave money to? Is it going to be just my kids? Is it going to be some organizations that I like? By the way, when you start talking about leaving money to children, give that a lot of thought. There's a lot of people in this world whose kids are a whole lot better off than they are when you think about it. People today, a lot of young people make large amounts of money. They don't need yours. And a lot of the kids would say, you earned it. You do with it what you please. I think that's important for people to think about. It's not always just about trying to provide better for your children because they may already be better financially. But you have to figure out, what's your capacity to give. You need to figure out who you would give to. You need to talk to your accountant. How can we best do this from a tax perspective? You need to talk to your attorney. What kind of documentation do we need to be able to do this? You need to talk to your financial advisor. Say, does this make sense? And if I do this, what pitfalls or benefits do you see for me? I'm sure you've had those conversations many times. And Dean will tell you, as he has told me, one of the biggest challenges for financial advisors with older, we'll just say older customers, who have accumulated significant levels of assets, is getting them to spend money. It's because I'm going to be 70 in May. I'm definitely in that group. Well, I can't spend more because who knows how long I'm going to live. Well, you know what? You never know that. You never know that. And you have to have somebody who is willing to take your hand and say, look, it's going to be okay. For Dean, it's saying to Dwayne, yes, you can buy the new Jeep and you won't be destitute and you'll be able to put food on your table and you'll still be able to leave some money to the people and organizations that you want to leave money to. Yeah. Right? Yeah, believe me, I called him. It's like, I don't know. I really like to have a new one. Well, just buy it. But you need to talk to those people. Now, quickly, we'll go over some plan giving options with the next slide. So you can make a bequest in a will. Again, you have to make sure your will's consistent with what your account, how your accounts are titled. You can name this church or another nonprofit as a beneficiary on an account. That works. You can gift either monies from an IRA or from a brokerage account or some other real estate, some other kind of asset while you're alive or after death. One of the things that's really, I think people kind of overlook sometimes, if you have, for instance, and I'll just throw out a number because if you bought a stock years ago and you paid $1,000 for that stock. And over time it has grown and grown and grown and it's paid dividends and you've reinvested the dividends and it's split and whatever. And now, lo and behold, that $1,000 investment is worth $20,000. If you sell that stock, you've got a $19,000 gain that you're going to pay taxes on. After you pay the taxes, then you can give that money to the church or other organization. Or you can just give them the stock. You get a tax deduction for $20,000. The nonprofit sells the stock for $20,000. They get the full amount. That's something you can do while you're alive benefits you from a tax perspective and gives additional benefit to the organization that you're wanting to support. A couple other things, again, you can look in your packet and find information about this, but I'll go back to the charitable gift annuity. You know, a lot of times people say, well, I don't want to give the money away because I might need it. Well, if you give money in a charitable gift annuity, especially if it's IRA assets that go into there, you're going to get a monthly check. So it's just like any other annuity in terms of it being a stream of income for you. So that's a possibility. Or you can create a charitable remainder trust with the assistance of an attorney. Those last two are irrevocable. Something else I wanted to throw out, and I know that we have people in the church that do this, is if you are over the age of 70 and a half, you can have, instead of taking required minimum, well, you don't have to take a required minimum distribution at 70 and a half. But if you get to 70 and a half, you can take money from your IRA, have it sent directly to the church or charity. And when I say directly, it means I would, if I had my IRA at Wells Fargo, I would write Dean a letter and I would say, I want you to transfer, do a direct transfer of whatever, $10,000 to EvUCC. I can't touch the money. It can't come to me and then me give it. It's got to go direct. But it does, if you're at an age where you have to take a required minimum distribution, it does count towards that. But the big thing is, you don't have to pay any taxes on it. If you take a distribution from an IRA, that's taxable income, unless you use this carve-out in the IRS regulations that allow you to have that money go directly to the not-for-profit. That's only if you're over 70 and a half. And you have to be literally over 70 and a half. I checked into this. I won't be 70 and a half until November, so I can't do anything until November. It's not the year that you're going to be 70 and a half. It's when you're 70 and a half. You can do what that's called a qualified charitable distribution from an IRA. You can do that every year, and you can do it up to $105,000 total every year. And one of the things that's nice about that, if you've got a substantial IRA, it will reduce your future required minimum distributions. And I think, Dean, you were speaking about that earlier, about how it can reduce your required.
Right. One of the problems we have, I say a problem, it's a good problem to have. You have too much money, so your required distribution is larger than you need. Meaning that the government's going to force you to pull money out of your retirement account that you don't really need to meet your budget demands. And so if it's given away, then the pile shrinks, obviously, if you've given the money away, and it'll reduce next year's required distribution, because the distribution is based on a percentage of what you have in that pile. So we work with a lot of our older clients to reduce the size of their IRA accounts to stop the forced distribution of excess revenue that they don't need. And one way to do that is meet their philanthropic budget with money directly from the IRA accounts. Did that answer the?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that just 401 or is it going to be like SUV? Is that just for a 401 IRA, or can that be included like in an SEP, any other type of retirement account? account?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, any qualified account, we can do the gifting from. So if it's coming out of the SEP, the 401k, the IRAs, anything like that, we can gift directly from those accounts.
But it's a great way to give and not have to pay additional taxes on that money. So, next slide, Kay. We're about to wrap up here. Some of your miscellaneous considerations. You know, you have to think about these things whenever you're looking at drafting a will or titling accounts. You know, what's your family structure like? You know, what are the ages of your kids? What are the needs of your kids? How many grandchildren do you have? Do you want to provide for, you know, funds for their future education? Again, what are some of the financial strengths maybe of your kids? Can they help you when you get towards the end of life? If you need financial assistance, can they and will they? You know, some kids can, but won't. Others want to, but can't. But those are things that you need to be thinking about when you're doing your own financial planning. How do you get enjoyment out of life? Does gifting give you some enjoyment? I can tell you that we've taken our adult kids and their families on vacations. We've gone to Disney World several times. We've been to South Dakota. We're going to the Grand Canyon next year. That's some of the best money I've ever spent. The memories that those moments made were fantastic. And my kids and grandkids got to do some things that they may not have done otherwise. And they got to experience some things. And that's one reason we're going to the Grand Canyon, and we're only taking the older grandkids, not the 5-year-olds that would jump over the edge. Although the older ones might throw each other over the edge. We don't know yet. But that might be a consideration. You know, maybe that's something you want to use your funds for, rather than saying, well, when I die, whenever that is, it might be 20 years from now, and those kids are, you know, they're grown and whatever. Keep that in mind. You know, what are the dynamics? What gives you pleasure in life? And what level of trust do you have in your heirs? Again, my parents, they used a letter of instruction to make sure that some money got given to the church. But at the same time, they protected my sister and I in case we had needs that they hadn't anticipated. You have to think about those things. Again, you have to think about the tax situation. It's often forgotten about, but talk to your accountant about that. Last slide. Oh, yeah, last slide. Next one. Who do you talk to? Hopefully you have an attorney. If you don't, you need to find one for this sort of thing. And I say this, and I don't mean to be disparaging to the legal profession, but my youngest son's an attorney. I did disparage him once in a while. Think about, would you really defend that person? Anyway, you need to find somebody that's got some expertise in things like wills and trust and estate planning. Not all attorneys do that. You know, they focus on different things, but there's a lot of them that do that. You can go to your county or your state bar association and find out, okay, these are the things that these attorneys specialize in. You need to talk to your accountant or tax preparer. And I don't mean to disparage some tax preparers either, but it may not be the best to talk to the H&R Block person at Walmart about your estate planning. you may need somebody that's got a little bit broader range of information and knowledge that can help you with that a little bit more. Talk to your financial advisor. I can tell you, financial advisors are nice because they kind of look at the whole big picture. And they can be very useful. And you can talk to your insurance agent. You know, you might have a life insurance policy that you would want to change a beneficiary on as part of your estate planning. Or you might want to buy a life insurance policy and make an organization the beneficiary. So talk to your insurance agent. If you do go that route, if you're going to buy something, always make sure you get multiple, you talk to multiple agents and you get multiple quotes. Get the best deal. There's a lot of stuff out there. So what are the 3 things you're going to remember from this? Your information needs to be current, secure, and accessible. Take the information that we've provided as well as what is in your packet of materials, go through that, and see what stirs you to take some action. There's 2 documents in there from the United Church Funds. One talks about planned giving specifically, but the other one, probably the more useful one, is really like a layout of these are things you need to go through and information you need to capture. It's just a document you could fill out and list your accounts and list your kids, list who your doctor is, things like that. But it's very thorough and it will help you with the whole process. And then the last document that is in your packet is simply there just for informational use. I found it and I thought it was really pretty good information. It's how you look at your house for an elder person. How do you make sure that your house is safe for living in when you become a little less mobile and you need things, you need that handle in the shower or whatever. So take a look at that. It's just for information. Hopefully you'll get something out of it. Have we spurred any questions that haven't been asked? Greg?
You said a will is public information?
Yes.
Is that something someone can see beforehand, or is that after the death?
After.
Oh, okay.
After, yeah, not before, after, yeah. Yeah, it's, and not many people go around looking to find what somebody's will said, but it is technically available. It's technically a public document. When you file for probate with the court, your will gets filed as part of that. So, yeah.
So the will and a letter of intention just needs to be available to, when you pass on, that somebody can find it.
Yeah, the letter of instruction, which is not a legal document and is not public, is where you can put a lot of this stuff that we've been talking about, like, where do you find my insurance policies, where do you find my will, how do you access it, who has access to it, as well as you can put some directives in there about things that don't really have, nobody needs to know, except your family. Well, thank you very much. If you got something out of this, let your friends and neighbors know. Be glad to go over this again with another group. So please keep that in mind and share the information. I've got more of these packets of information, which if people are interested, tell them about it, and they'd like to get more information, I'll be glad to give them a packet of information. Amanda loves using that copy machine. It is an awesome copy machine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.